ran. It's a beautiful boat, you know, the mahogany and all that stuff. And he would take us out duck hunting. Buddy would, you know. And I'd have to stand on a crate to look over you know, the Bailey that was there. But we could sure shoot 20 ducks in a hurry. And anyway, it was a lot of fun. He was a neat guy. And this saying that Buddy had when he went into the military, he and Frank Murkison said to my brother and I, you all can have this saying while Buddy's gone and take care of it. And my grandma's house.
When you say saying, we're talking about a beach saying.
No, yeah, we're talking about a 400-foot,
Right. Okay,
6 feet high, and you had the cork line,
and lead line.
and you had the lead line, and then you had those two big poles, you know, and
Right.
and you would take it off of. We built a thing on the back end of an old car that we had, and that my father had gotten somewhere, and and this is during the war years now. And anyway, we built a big old platform about this long or wide, I'd say, and it kind of went back in under the back end of the car.
Right.
And you could stack one on one side and one on the other, and we'd stack that seine up on top of there. And we'd go down and we'd go about, you know, just a little past the South Jetty or the pier, and there were no people to speak of. And my brother was taller than I was and stronger at that time, but I was probably 10 when I remember most of it, and he would go on the deep line and start dropping it off, and I'd be in about the second, or between the first and the second sandbar, and I'd start dragging depending on where the tides were, if they were going north, if they were going south, and you went with the current, you know, and you made kind of a big loop of that point, and then he would come in, and when he would start coming in, I'd come in. And then if it was full of seaweed, we'd have to either have somebody help us. Somebody would be driving by in a car, and they'd see us, and they'd automatically get out, it seemed like. But I'll tell you what was in those nets you would not believe. And we had a big old number 5 wash tub with a 25-pound block of ice in it. And we'd load that thing up. Mr. Murkison told us, he said, now you boys can have this, but you gotta provide me with some fish. Well, that was the easiest thing.
Easy to do,
I'm telling you, we had trout and redfish and stingrays, and we caught a swordfish that had a sword about that long and about the body about the same length. It was really neat. We gave that to Mr. Murkison. And just odds and ends, you had snook that would, you know, a snook would hit our lines, and that's where Barney Farley came in, because he taught us how to make the right kind of knot. And you know, we had those little things that held the line. They're called a thin. There's a name, huh?
Needle.
Needle. That needle was about that long, right. and you threaded the line in there. There was no. It was some kind of a cotton type line, but it was strong.
Tar coated too.
Huh?
They were tar coated.
Well, the ones we had weren't.
A lot of them used tar. They were dipped in tar to keep from rotting.
Yeah, we didn't have that, and they rotted, and we kept, you know, we mended and mended and mended when we got back through, especially if we hit a whole bunch of snook, because they'd hit and they had that pointed nose, and they'd hit that square about that. That nose would go in there, and they'd do that.
Rip it out.
And they'd rip it out. It'd be a big old hole there, and there's another snook. But anyway.
And how many people to do that now? Just you and your brother?
Me and my brother could do it, but we usually had some other people that would were on the beach.
Okay.
And they would help us pull it in. If we didn't have any seaweed, we could pull it in real easy, even with a bunch of fish.
Just slow.
Because it was slow, you know, we get that pole behind our back and then hold it like that and just, you know, push, you go about that far, that far. But once you got that first piece on the sand, the rest of it, we'd run out there and we'd grab, you know, the sand
by hand.
And just start, you know, pulling one section in, it would eventually kind of get in. But I'm telling you, I bet you we would have 100 to 150 big blue crabs in that net every time we pulled it in. There was more blue crabs out there in those days than you can imagine. And we let them all go, you know, unless we wanted to have some to eat, you know.
Sure.
But always had that, and you always had stingrays, and we'd have, you know, we caught some small shark, no real big ones, but that one sawfish was, you know, kind of interesting. But we caught a variety of fish. Spanish mackerel would, you know, a lot of those fish would jump over.
Sure.
But a lot of them get caught up in that net, and it was just, you know, 2 drags, 3 drags of it, and you'd have so many fish you wouldn't know what to do with it.
You're giving it all away.
And the end of the story was we went down and bought ourselves a commercial license, which didn't cost hardly anything, and we sold fish down there to whoever wanted it at about like 10 cents a pound, 15 cents a pound, something like that. So we got a little income.
So you made money.
Made a little money out of the deal.
Now, back, I didn't get to see whatever picture.
This is an interesting picture. This is me and my brother, my dad, and my mother. And that's probably, I would guess, I'm probably 6 years old, 7, something like that.
And you'll sit down with Mark, and he'll need to get names and scan these.
That's Matthew's dog right there. And that's that tarpon that my mother called.
And you were born what year again?
33,
And which one was you?
right here. My brother's 2.5 years older than me.
And that was in 1937?
That's something.
Because it was Barney's place in 37, the same building.
Same building.
For 37, 38, it was Barney's place.
It's Barney's place, yeah.
So we can kind of date a lot of pictures by that. And that fits at your age about in that picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. These are just, you know, odds and ends of my father and I, but this is what we hunted.
Had a lot of duck pictures I noticed in some of these, so y'all did a lot of duck hunting.
Oh, we hunted and fished and everything. This is Ernest Brown's daddy right there. That's him. And this boat, it's right here. He's my first cousin. This is Ernest Brown's daddy now. He built this boat in Houston, and then we drove it down all the way from Houston to Port Aransas.
With that outboard on it?
With the outboard?
With that one outboard, 16 horsepower. And anyway, when my cousin
That's a trip.
graduated from A&M, he was a Air Force pilot, and he was going to Korea, and he endowed me with this boat to take care of while he was gone. He was gone for a couple of years, and so that was me taking care of his boat.
Is that the same boat?
That's the same boat. Look at.
Let me get a picture of that. I'm gonna put it in front of the camera here.
You can really see the artwork that he did. He was a fabulous guy there, you know.
We're gonna scan all these
Yeah.
and we'll mark
There's
with
my
them.
grandmother.
Yeah, and on your steps you were just
Yeah.
describing. And that's
Let's get the
probably
picture.
your light,
Let's get the picture of you two in '37.
the Barney's place.
Oh,
There we go.
In that same vein, a girl in San Antonio named Frances Jordan. She and I, she still goes to the same church I go to. She and I were in elementary, junior high, high school. And I called Frances, I said, Frances, you remember when she used to go out on the South Pier when she was 15, 16, and 17, those 3 years. They stayed at Barney's Rock Cottages. Barney Farley made her a really good rod for tarpon, and she bought and got a reel. And I got pictures of her catching. You will not believe what happened. Now this is just a young girl. This is all of her stuff. But I'll show you what.
And we'll keep this separate so we don't mix up.
I don't want
We don't want to mix these up. We certainly want to look at them.
Yeah. Get to her pictures. Let's see, they may be right here. Yeah. No. This is all Ernest Brown stuff. I got it mixed up. All right, so this is all my cousin. This is the Ernest Brown that you know, and these are pictures that he pulled out. And these are pictures of the house, the old house here. Mm-hmm. And Clint Brown was his father's first cousin. And Doris Brown's his mother, who's there, and this is Ernest. And this is just some pictures of them growing up. And you can see how void it is. See there, those houses?
There's very little in the background.
You see these houses?
Mhm.
Those houses that's where Barney Farley was right there. And this is kind of going in the driveway. Well, there's no driveway. It's just, we just drove through the sand.
I guess for the record, what happened to the old boat?
Well, I kept it, and when Ernest came back from Korea, he had the boat, and it got old and older and older, and he just rode it until it kind of disintegrated.
Okay, so it just fell apart.
It just, yeah, and but he was quite a craftsman, and those were wonderful. These are all just pictures of, that's Big, and that's Ernesto, that's his son, I guess. Or, no, that's his brother. That's my cousin's brother right there, Bruce Brown. And that's, all those pictures. But that's what I really want to show you too. You need any of these at all?
Oh, we'd like to
We'll
scan
let
them.
Mark
Yeah.
Make that.
These.
But let's put them back in the
All right,
right.
these all go in this great big envelope, right?
With these.
Yeah.
Are these envelopes empty?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's put that. We don't want to mix.
Well, I don't want to get them messed up either.
But there are some in there that, I think we probably
We'll use some of those, and then
utilize.
this one,
We like the ones with the backgrounds where you can identify buildings and dates, and it helps.
another interesting thing, y'all know the book Aransas, obviously.
I've actually never read that.
Let me tell you something, it's the finest book that is documented by people like Hobart Houston, who was from Refugio, and probably one of the preeminent, what do you want to call it?
And you've got a copy of that?
Have you read it? Have you read the book? Well, anyway, there is a family member that was one of the.
I don't remember everything in it, because I've read a lot of books.
See, what I was gonna do is, and I haven't, but this is 1919. But there's a guy in here who, is he trying to Rockport?
1940.
100-foot sub chasers.
That's the boat you're referring to.
Yep.
You want a picture of that?
What I'm thinking though is there is tons of stuff like this that I wondered if I got in here and started really looking at it again, I've read it before, is some of the military stuff. And that's just one, this is it here.
I need to get a copy
Yeah,
of
this-
that.
this-
And
is,
then this guy just died. T.R. Fehrenbach is in San Antonio. He goes to our church. He died. And he is another preeminent guy that has written tons of stuff, you know. And,
That was put out by the Historical Society of Aransas County, right?
yep.
For the 150th anniversary or something like that, I
I
forgot.
tell you what, it's got everybody that was anybody in here, and it's very, very well. And here are your patrons right here: Perry Bass, Charlie Butt,
Right.
Yeah.
Catherine Hastings, Mr. and Mrs. Edward Armstrong, Clayton Black, Susie Brock Black. That's Brock Lumber, you know.
Sure.
Cecil Frost, Valerie and Glenn Guillory, James and Edith Snigg, and so forth and so on. And then sponsors: Aransas County Historical Society,
Right.
H.T. Bailey and Holly Beckley Bailey, Mr. and Mrs. Joe L. Johnson Jr., Laguna Reef, Mr. and Mrs. Robert Little, Sandra Spencer Munzer, and Rockport Art Association.
So this is a book
Here's
I
the
need
donors.
to read, but
Pardon?
what else do you?
There's not a tremendous amount around about Port Aransas,
About
but it's
Aransas
about
County.
the area around
Area.
here.
Well, it begins very interestingly about the Indians over here. You know, it kind of gives you a history of what it was. But anyway, it's a great book. I just thought I'd bring it down. This is the girl that I'm talking about.
There we go.
This is something else. This is Frances Hearn. And there it is.
Frances Hearn.
Well, her maiden name is Jordan. Mrs. Frances Jordan. She married a guy named Hearn. He passed away. But anyway, this
Were they
is
in
an
the
article.
Were they in the trucking business?
No,
That was Heard.
That was her, yeah.
Okay.
All right, so this is her daddy and both boys. And anyway, there is what he caught. But there's Frances right there.
Okay.
She caught that and that.
Off the pier.
See this picture right here?
That's a good picture.
Isn't that a great picture? And that's the one that
Let's let that get on the camera. Let's see.
And then, well, that's some high school things in San Antonio. But anyway,
Let Mark get a
this
shot. just
Look-
so
look
the
at
reference.
she broke the pole, and this guy came and helped her hold it. See there?
Right.
There he is. There she is, and the rod is broken there, and see the hand holding it.
Mhm.
Look at this picture. And that one, and this one.
What do you have
Can,
in the back?
can you write her name on the envelope and then the other name?
There's some pictures of her, you know, there's other people fish. You know
Was she
that,
related? Was that, I'm trying to remember the connection between her? That family?
no, her family came from South Carolina or something like that, and they moved to San Antonio, Texas when she was probably in the 6th or 7th grade.
Okay.
But anyway, well, that's pretty neat, isn't it? And this is her, look at that.
Big fish.
Well, one of these is 6.9 feet. That's a big fish. And you know how they got them up? They just got them up with grappling hooks
Sure.
off the end of the pier.
Hooks and ropes.
Yeah.
Mark, again, Mark will take care of the pictures.
So that'd be fun. She's really.
What other memories do you have from the wartime?
Let me,
What about other, who were you friends with?
I got it right here. This is kind of where I am. By the way, I've got to find out if I got a phone number. I need to call Carol.
Okay.
See that just
Fred?
made me really feel good, because I think I mean, those were splendid boats.
They were.
And to have them, you know, regenerated like it's being done, you know, I commend everybody. And I had more fun and messing around with the computer over there and seeing what was being done is just, I think it's wonderful. But, you know, this place,
We're up to 17,000.
What questions would you have?
Any
No doubt.
people that you remember?
yeah, right
You
here.
know, the Barney Farley, like I said, Florida Roberts,
I wrote this
and
down.
Matthews.
First off, Port A, early days, trip in summer, that was 1935 to 46. And that's what I was telling you about this guy,
I'm still listening.
Skinny Gresham, and the cottages that were there, you know, the real ice boxes, I call. And the story I had, Frank Pascal was another doctor in San Antonio, and he had a son. And Frank Pascal's son was out there, and my first encounter, and I can remember, I'm probably 4 years old now, and this is what I remember. He was older than I was, and he walked out there, and he had a Portuguese man of war, those tentacles, they were wrapped all the way around, and he almost died. He was a young man, and he almost died, and I remember that, and that was at those cottages down there. And then my grandmother Walford built the house. We've talked about that and what it was, 70 feet long, 40 feet wide. Other people that were there, people that were here that I think I'm right in this, were people that built houses probably right after World War II. They were not before. Maybe a couple of them were, and I think one of them was Randolph Carter. Randolph Carter had a house, you know where that Burroughs house is?
Right.
If you go north of that, there's a hill, that you go up that hill.
Correct.
Very top of that hill was Randolph Carter's house, and he built that house.
And that's Frank.
That's Frank's dad.
Frank's dad.
Frank is 96. He's still alive and lives there.
94.
94.
Okay. Well, anyway, Randolph Carter. Then Ralph Fair and Dottie. I'm pretty sure that Dottie loved to go out in the Gulf. They had a beautiful boat. And he built a house. Here's my grandmother's house, then Frank Murchson's house was up on this hill. There was another hill to the north and diagonally from my grandmother's house. And that was built after World War II for sure. And he had a son that was my age, still alive and lives in San Antonio. But anyway, Ralph Fair, I think Aubrey and Marbury,
Nelson. Nelson.
were the boatmen for either the Fairs or in combination with another couple called Cy and Madeline Nelson. Cy and Madeline Nelson had no children. They were very wealthy people. And Aubrey and Marbury may have been with both of them, you know, back and forth, because they had their boats right down there to the right, you know, pretty close to
The Frank Murchison that you're
yeah.
mentioning, was he related to Clint Murchison at all?
He was a brother.
Okay, now Clint Murchison owned, with somebody else, owned the Causeway Company
Yeah.
and everything on Harbor Island and the road and trestle and all that kind of stuff.
Ferries.
No.
Not the ferries.
The guy that owned it was Hal Dewar, and when it was, you remember the old
causeway, trestle.
Causeway had the turnouts. If you were driving this way and somebody was driving this way, the first person that came to the turnout went into the turnout so that the other person could pass, and they go, and they had a series of those turnouts. That causeway was purchased by Robbie Robertson and the Robertson family and Hal Dewar. They were in the investment banking business, and they bought the causeway.
Deurr?
Dewar.
Okay.
And and Bobby Dewar and I grew up together. My mother and Bobby's mother were at the University of Texas together, and so we go way back. And Hal Dewar and Robbie Robertson sold it to Nueces County when they built the new causeway. But they retained the minerals too.
Now that's interesting because the paperwork says that Murchison was involved selling it to the county.
Well, they may have sold it then to Murchison, who then sold it to the county. So you may be 100% right. All I know is that going way back, they owned not only, hey Carol, WAIR, Old Man Fair.
That's not the Ferris that we're here.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Old Man Ralph Fair in World War II flew with the Air Force to some place in Europe where he had discovered oil. And he was extraordinarily wealthy. But he was in that, like a B-24 or something like that. And they were flying, and what they did, they flew over there to where they could pinpoint the refineries, where the wells were and so forth, and they just bombed the living.
Where was this man from?
This man, I don't know, but he married a San Antonio woman. I don't know where he was born, but I know his children. Ralph Jr. is exactly my age. We used to play together.
So
But
did
he's
they
still
have
alive.
did they have a place in Port A?
Yeah, they built a house there, I think, probably more like in the 50s, good guess, after the war and so forth, but it could have been.
Where was that?
It was built, here's my grandmother's house, here's Murchison's house, there's Fair's house. And I mean, it was like 2 blocks away.
If it was,
It would be, Fair would be in this, right there, just opposite. Frank Murchison's here, grandmother's house is there, there's that. That was his house, somewhere right there.
big, pretty big house?
It was not all that big. It had a good size house, but it also had a big garage apartment, and a lady stayed there in that apartment. And that was Ralph Fair, and they had a boat.